Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for what is one of the most exciting stages of the year. Giro d'Italia, Eat Your Heart Out, Stage 5 from Pau to Laurent. We saw this stage in 2020 where it was pretty exciting then with Hirschi in the break ahead of Roglic and Pogacar, where Pogacar took his first Tour de France stage. 162 Ks, not that long, quite a long 70K valley before. These up and down rolling, they're harder than they look. These Pyrenean valleys, speaking from personal experience, before the Col du Soudet, the first all-category climb of the race, 15.2 Ks, 7% irregular too. Also a feature of these climbs, both in this stage and this region. Another descent, valley, Col de Cher, a little 4.2 K, 6% warm-up descent, and then the Col de Marie Blanque, fake news. 7.8 Ks, 8.4%, 4.8 Ks, 10.5% the last 5 Ks, and then a descent, and then about 8 Ks uphill, a false slide uphill to the finishing Laurent. What did you think would be the goals of each of the teams for this stage, Benji? Like, what would a goal for Ineos and a lot of the teams like a Bora, like a Groupama, your GC guys try and stay with the best guys possible on Marie Blanque, and then put a fringe guy in the break to try and win the stage?
It's a combination here because we know the starting phase, the breakaway formation phase in this stage is seemingly pretty explosive. We saw it 3 years ago. We saw it in stages like that. People want to be in this bloody breakaway. So if you're a UAE, you want a breakaway that is not that dangerous, but maybe you're right around 4 minutes there. That's how I would have seen it. If I was UAE personally, I would have been like, I want like a group of 12, 13 riders, maybe a rider in there on 4 minutes that we can give the yellow jersey to so we don't have the weight on our shoulders. That's what I would have liked if I was UAE starting this stage. But there's so many different teams willing to go in the breakaway, like Jumbo-Visma. They want to go in the breakaway because Wout van Aert desperately wants to win a bloody stage, and their team perhaps wants to set satellite riders up the road because the stage does have that terrain type. Col de Marie Blanque, you want a rider on top to try and help you, that kind of scenario. But the other teams you mentioned, Bora, Ineos, and so forth, they've got other scenarios they can play with. Now, I will say that I wasn't expecting the strategy that Bora applied on the stage at all before the stage started, even though I love it. But when it comes to teams like Ineos and so forth, put riders in the breakaway, hope that they could either go for the stage or that if they're not good enough for the stage, I can help your GC rider get away from other top 3, top 5 candidates. But outside of that, breakaway riders galore throughout.
It was just so much jumping out of neutral, and the problem is there's no like 7% climb, 7K 7% climb for them to just, the best climbers to get away. And so you see Paulus wasting a lot of energy out of neutral. He's jumping with like Campenaerts on the flat, and the first move's not going to just go. Too many teams. It's not like the other sprint stages. Too many teams want to be in the breakaway. That's just not how it works. That the first move beautifully splits and everyone's happy, everyone's represented that wants to be in there. And so he missed out. Uran, I think, eventually did get in the breakaway later, but Jumbo were buying that. I initially saw Van Hooijdonk and Dylan van Baarle trying to get in, and then later we saw Ineos wanted to be in. Kwiato was the first moving with Turner. So it was very clear. Jumbo wanted to be in the break with Van Baarle, Benoot, or Van Aert, or even Laporte. They wanted to get rouleurs ahead like they did last year. UAE, if Jumbo were in the break, they needed numbers in the break. That seemed to be their MO too, because wherever Jumbo went, UAE went. And who else? Well, and then how did the break eventually form, Benji? Because we can't run through every single attack, but I swear there were initial groups off the front with like a Bettiol and Van Aert.
Yeah. There's just numerous splits. One, for example, is a group that was created with Bettiol ahead, and then a second group joined them with Uran, and there was a group with 2 EF riders, but who closes that? Paulus, EF teammate, because he's got the KOM jersey and he wants that breakaway to have himself in it so he can fight for that. So he basically self-neutralized a breakaway with 2 teammates in there, and this happened a few times where Paulus was basically going for his polka dot jersey and therefore hinders some other EF riders going into breakaways. And also other breakaways that he missed out on, because I swear he was always late at jumping, but in doing so, he brought other riders with him. And usually that was a UAE rider that jumped on his wheel and then closed with the entire peloton in his wheel, the actual breakaway moves. But eventually a large group started to form. Gotta mention, Pogacar tried to jump into a breakaway early as well, which I found pretty funny. I like that stuff. It's a sign that he's trying to work out strategies at every point of the race.
No,
Or
to me, I saw it as massive weakness.
massive weakness,
Yeah.
as in desperately trying to control the breakaway.
It makes no sense. He's not trying. He's trying to jump in and make Jonas know. It's like it's pointless to me, unless you make Jonas panic, because you're not going anywhere with it. Like you're not going to get in the breakaway, and Jumbo have the rouleurs there. It's like 60 k's of flat. So I saw it as kind of stupid stuff he was doing. Last year was different because it was like rollier terrain, but I saw it today as I was like, that's I thought it was surprising. I wouldn't have personally been wasting energy there. We saw though, Hindley got on the breakaway. That's the big news of the day, basically. Initially, Hindley gets in the break. He was kind of hiding. I think, and this makes a difference. Hindley wasn't shown by the TV cameras for a long time when this break had formed. We saw Conrad at the front a lot. We saw Buchmann in there. Like, there can't be a third boar in there. He was he was hiding at the back. And at this time, Laporte's pulling the brake. And the brake's gone now. UAE have had Bjerg had a flat at an inopportune time. They've got Lang and Trentin trying to restore some modicum of control. The gap goes to 90 seconds before a lot of the team, well, Jumbo in particular, were like, we can't just pull Jai Hindley all day. And then they tried to create splits, and that's where we saw some more interesting stuff from UAE.
I do have to say, when it comes to this breakaway, is the reason that they don't spot Hindley being in that breakaway so quickly, potentially that Jumbo and UAE are so focused on each other that UAE is saying, okay, you need to make sure you're in a breakaway with every Jumbo rider. We need to have a UAE rider in there. But next to that, there's also other riders in this race, like Hindley, like Landa and so forth. All those like top 3 to top 5 to top 7 favorites that could also have been in this group in the same way Hindley has done. Is it because the focus is so hard on Jumbo from UAE side that they didn't spot that? But also, why is UAE the one that needs to control this? Because they're in the lead with Adam Yates? Because I would say Vingegaard was on paper the better climber on longer climbs. Wouldn't you argue that Pogacar is then the one fighting the man to beat Vingegaard in this tour?
I mean, that's how we see it, but Benji, they don't see the race. They don't see it the way we do. And, a lot of pundits, not just across the world, they see Pogacar really strong on Côte de Piquet. They see Pogacar winning the sprint on Hayescabel, and they think Pogacar, a lot of people think Grenal was team tactics, and the team tactics, don't get me wrong, they did make a difference, but how Autocam gets very, very quickly forgotten. That Jonas also just straight up smoked Poggi on Hausegger.
He's just a better climber on longer climbs.
Yes.
Facts.
But today's not a longer climb.
Agreed.
Today is a climb where Pogacar attacked from the base of the steep section in 2020. He won the stage, and he was attacking Jonas in the Basque Country climbs. Now, this is also not the Basque Country climbs. This is not a 7-minute, 5-minute VO2 max power test. This is actually much, much longer Marie Blanque, especially the steeper section, and it's consistently steep. So I think they also probably, there is an underappreciation for Vingegaard's Basque Country for performances. I mean, the Tour of the Basque Country. I think people don't, because who did he beat, Benji? Who did he beat? But the watts on those shorter climbs were big.
Yeah, in the same way that, for example, Pogacar in Andalusia was also impressive. Obviously, his accident happened afterwards in LBL. What if Pogacar was here without that accident? Would he be in a better form than he currently is? Who knows? But we're currently at the start of the race. We see that breakaway.
But you think UAE should have called Jumbo's bluff?
It depends, because Jumbo's bluff. Let's talk about it. So Hindley's in the breakaway, a group of 36 riders with so many teams involved. Quickstep with 3 riders, Cavagna, Asgreen, Alaphilippe.
Tug buddies galore.
Exactly. EF with Chavez Uran, Ineos with 2 riders, Freiland Martinez. Then we've got Soler and Grosschartner for UAE, 3 riders from Jumbo, but note Laporte van Aert. And then we continue. 3 riders from Trek, Ciccone, Lopez, Pedersen, 3 riders from Ajuzer. So there's teammates everywhere. Gulls in there with Berthet, with the likes of Paris-Pentre. And when you see a breakaway that large, it is very difficult to control that breakaway. But UAE have riders in that breakaway. So they're kind of like hedging their bets on both controlling and being in the breakaway to neutralize it from the inside.
It makes no sense.
Is what you would see from that scenario. But what is the bluff you're talking about? What happens now? Directly after this breakaway forms, UAE keeps pacing in the peloton with Langen. So they're in the breakaway with 2 riders. They keep pacing behind. and Jumbo's in the breakaway and doesn't pace behind. So the bluff is Jumbo's not pacing behind and is putting all the pressure on UAE right now. And I think that is the right thing to do by Jumbo at that point, because I was thinking, okay, if you're Jumbo, yes, Hindley is dangerous, but the imminent danger is UAE at the moment.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, let's try and burn UAE. And if it does get out of control, then you can still adapt to the situation. You want to try and burn UAE and then find a counter towards UAE and try and do something like that. Because if they spend all their riders spacing all day, then you might be able to benefit towards the end.
And also, you know, looking at this stage beforehand, not knowing what eventually happens, you would say, do Jumbo really want to pace all day for Pogacar to maybe take bonus seconds again?
Yep.
You know, so with the break going up the road, not ideal with Hindley. I did think maybe later they could have put a rider to pace, but anyway, the flies are back irritating me. That's why I'm kind of distracted. Yeah, but yeah, it's Felix Gall is in there. I'm not sure we've mentioned him with two tug buddies, Aurelien Peripintra and Berthet. They were outstanding, those two. AG2 are very, very impressive. And yeah, Benoit Laporte, Van Aert, you mentioned Gros, Schattner and Soler. They were both in the break, not trying to split it up, because before Soudet, we get the breaks formed. People don't want, like, ideally you don't want Hindley in there, because Hindley is a serious GC guy. He won the Giro. You know, his form in the Dauphiné where he came fourth, but that was just because of the TT. He dropped O'Connor he came third on the Queen stage of the Dauphiné.
We both believed he could podium this Tour de France beforehand. Yeah,
and he was, I think, third or fourth favorite for the Tour. He's a serious guy. You can't just let him, take 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Van Hils is in there with Camminats and Co. So Jumbo eventually tried to start splitting this break up because they want riders in the break, but they want to reform the break. The problem for them was before Soudet, Van Aert goes ahead with Camminats, Pedersen, and Coquard, but they don't bring Alaphilippe with them.
Yeah.
And so without Alaphilippe, without AG2R, all of a sudden, Patrick Conrad has two teammates.
Yep.
Remy Cavagna and Casper Asgreen pull the Hindley group full.
Yeah.
And so you now have the break maybe going quicker than it would have gone before. You've got Van Aert dangling burning energy 20 seconds ahead before Soudet. And you've got UAE chasing full, and Hindley's getting a free ride.
Yep.
And Bookman's not having to do anything before Soudet.
And it's actually exactly the opposite of what you wanted to achieve in the first place, because what I would see Wout's plan to be was, like you say, split up the group and hope that Hindley's caught behind in that split, and therefore the second group has some kind of Group 2 syndrome occurring where they don't really cooperate too well. You've got a group of rouleurs that is ahead. We see this quite a few times in races. I think on the stage where Matthews won on Monde, he actually got away, got a bit of a gap on the peloton because the Group 2 didn't really work together that well. And that's the kind of scenario you want to achieve if you're Jumbo, because on one end, you don't want to pace behind because otherwise you're blinking.
Yeah.
And you're basically saying to UAE, are we going to pace with you because we're also scared of Hindley? So you want to force the full pressure on UAE. But on the other end, you're also scared of Hindley a tiny bit. And you're like, let's try and not make it easy for this guy. So let's try and hinder him by making split ups in the group and make sure that both Hindley's suffering and that both UAE suffering behind.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and you just got to bring Martinez or Freyler with you. You have to bring Gall with you. You have to bring Alaphilippe with you. And
it's difficult, eh? You can't predict that, eh?
No, you stop.
But
there's a long you stop with Wout, and then you try resplit again.
Yep.
And you try but also it is very, very difficult to get the right composition.
Yeah.
Every time. So. Anyway, Trek were also all in for Chicone stage win. Pedersen went for the intermediate sprint points. I thought Pedersen, so we have now the situation. Van Aert, Coquard, Pedersen, Camminats. Pedersen and Coquard do the intermediate sprint. Coquard drops back, predictably. Pedersen keeps going.
Yep.
And I thought, why is he doing this? Why is he helping Van Aert? Soudet. He's got Chicone behind. I realized they were hoping Pedersen could get over Soudet, so Chicone would have a tug buddy in the valley afterwards. It didn't work out that way, but that is why that was happening.
And the same reason it didn't work out was the same reason that Wout van Aert wasn't able to get that goal he wanted either, because while Wout van Aert was also probably trying to gain a gap so that he can actually fight for the stage win, he was trying to split up the group and have Hindley behind and have the Hindley group go slower. Pedersen, same scenario, because they don't have quick step and there, he's also fucked because the gap is not big enough, so he's not far ahead enough on Soudet. And we get to Soudet when it comes to this breakaway. I'd say the gap to the peloton was at this point leaning towards a 3 minutes, 34 minutes roughly, because we've had moments before where it went up and down a tiny bit, but it's been gradually growing over time towards the likes of Sude. So
And UAE
that's a
weren't
solid
panicking.
gap.
UAE were chilling, right?
Only Langen and Bjerg were
Yeah.
pacing at that point, which at that point, I'm thinking Langen and Bjerg are in the peloton. They're pacing. UAE is not panicking at all. If we look at the breakaway and the scenario that's unfolding on Sude, because then you see that teams are starting to pace. Cavagnas pacing behind the group of Wout van Aert because Alaphilippe wants to get something out of the stage, and Wout van Aert being ahead is not on his book of nice things in this stage. And when Cavagnas is done, Alaphilippe does a bit of a move, but then just keeps on pacing it a tiny bit until we get Trek Segafredo. No, Little Trek, my bad, boys.
Little track.
Go to the front, and Juanpe is the man that is pacing there because Pedersen is also dropping ahead. So that reduces the gap to the front from Chiccone's group to Wout van Aert, but it also creates a situation where behind UAE also Langen's losing more time on the climb itself.
Yeah. Because UAE want to bring Langen and Bjerg over the top of Sude.
Yeah.
They need those two rouleurs. I think Trentin might have dropped. They need those two rouleurs for the valley. If they can't be having Soler pacing, and this is what was curious, Soler drops out of the break.
Yeah.
So Soler had spent all that energy, all that stress to be in the break, to be quote unquote represented.
Yeah.
Him and Grosjean chased splits that didn't have Hindley in it and brought Hindley back. And then they just drop out of the break anyway to pace. It made no sense to me because Grosjean it's not like you need.
Well,
you do not need Grosjean and Soler to get over the top of Sude. Okay, with Christophe Laporte or Pedersen or something, you need them ahead because they're not going to make it over the top of Col du Sude because it's too hard. These guys are good climbers. They're going to make a group of 2025. So to me, I think they were like, we want to be represented with Jumbo because we want to, and then they realized, fuck, we actually need to chase behind.
That's the point you looked at afterwards, eh? That you looked at earlier.
Yeah.
The fact that they were closing splits that were trying to be occurring before Sude. Grosjean chasing down a four-man group that's trying to get away and so forth. It's good for you that those splits happen. But when it comes to Soler and Grosjean eventually going back to the peloton, I do think that was a good move. As in, the adaptation to actually pull them back was the right move. I do feel like Soler was the one that was waiting. Grosjean felt more like he was dropping, and looking at the work he did afterwards, seemingly he spent quite a bit of energy throughout the stage. So I think it's the right decision to pull them back regardless of the mistakes you make beforehand.
Yeah.
And we're basically towards the top of Sude now.
Vultures. We just see there were some Griffin vultures on a ledge. That was pretty cool from heli shot. That was in the notes. I made Benji put it in the notes.
So yeah, we had some vultures. I think that was before Sude, by the way. But on Sude, we go towards the top, and Juanpe had that work. Ciccone launches from his wheel towards Wout van Aert and Campenaerts. Those were the remaining two men ahead. Campenaerts strong climbing there, to be fair. But obviously after that, Campenaerts is gone. Wout van Aert holds on for a bit because that group is now the likes of Ciccone, with Hindley, with Gal, with 2 or 3 other riders roughly. And Wout van Aert started having trouble from that point onwards in that group. And Benoit was already a bit behind at that point in the race. And we get towards the top, and who's going to fight for KOM? Because Col de Sude has more KOM points than all the KOM points we had before.
This is the thing with Powerless. Like, I don't know if Powerless is Powerless the man you choose to do the exposure KOM like Court did last year?
Not the right person.
He's kind of too good, right?
Yeah.
Like, if he really wanted to go for KOM, first of all, he needs to not jump right at the start of the stage. He needs to be patient. But, was he tired from before? I also think he would have struggled. Like, Felix Gala rode away from the GC group in Tour de Suisse and won the stage. Like, we now have very serious climbers going clear. Gull, Ciccone, Hindley, Bookman's pulling that group as well. So now Jumbo-Visma, they're in, and UAE, they're kind of in trouble. It looks like they're in trouble because the gap is like 3.5 minutes. Hindley's bringing a teammate with him over the top of Sude. Yeah. He's got 2 guys in goal and Ciccone who will just go for the stage and and they will pull with him, and they back themselves against him at his level. And now it's like, fuck, like Hindley could take a lot of time here.
It's a combination here because as the breakaway is reducing, you're also thinking, okay, if the breakaway actually becomes a four-man group after this climb, then they're weaker in the breakaway. But the other riders are not far behind. Buchmann's not far behind, hasn't worked so much on this climb. He's done a bit of work on Sude, but other teams have done it for them, so he didn't really need it to work so far. But because those riders are so close, we saw that those riders start coming back. Those riders start coming back one by one. Gull, who ended off the front at the top, he's getting caught back again in the descent because, well,
He's bad on the descent.
he's not a great descender, unfortunately. And we get this larger group forming, and then it's a battle between that and the peloton. And the curious case at this point is, what will Jumbo do? Because we've got a breakaway up front, roughly 8 riders, with Wout van Aert and Benoot slightly off the back of that group after they dropped on the climb itself. In the peloton, we've got UAE pacing, still with Langen and still with Bjerg. Bjerg over the top of today, I'm pretty sure. But we've seen in previous stages, I think we mentioned it in stage 2, Jijskebel, that UAE was pretty meh when it comes to descending with their team and losing gaps in between riders in the corners every descent and so forth. So I expected them to lose more time in the descent. I feel like it was relatively okay the time they actually lost in the descent, but that group ahead, what did you think at that point Jumbo should do? Because one, they're behind the front group. They're not in the front group. They are coming back to the front group in the descent. What can they still mean in this stage? Because Wout van Aert and Benoot have shown that they're not good enough to win this stage.
Yeah, so Jumbo are now in a difficult situation where they clearly want one of Van Aert or Benoot to be a satellite rider.
Yeah. Because
realistically, then, well, both of them can't win the stage. I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
And even though hashtag Simon winning, so one of them wants to be a satellite rider. But if you don't chase this break and UAE are fucked, do you want to give Hindley more time than he needs? But we're also living in the pre-Marie Blanque world, Benji, where we don't necessarily believe, do you want to give Pogacar 8 bonus seconds? And so on balance, I do believe they should have put Van Baarle on the front. To just, because what happens was, did you mention that Van Aert resplit it?
Oh, not yet.
So what they chose to do was try and do what they did before Sude. Van Aert tries to resplit, goes across the Neylands. Alaphilippe goes with him. The problem again is no Felix Gall with him. And he has 2 teammates, Berthet and Aurelien Paripancha. No Danny Martinez with him. Freyler pool's full. So we have exactly the same situation where teams who want to go for the stage have missed out on this counter move, and Hindley gets to come through, and Bookman doesn't have to pull. So Bora, it was perfect for Bora, and UAE weren't really. UAE, they did close it. I think it would go 330 to maybe 240 at the base of Marie Blanque.
Yeah, the gap was indeed lowering, but also you spoke about Bookman for a second there. He didn't need to pace it all on Sude because other teams did it for him. In the valley, there were moments where he was working. There were moments where he wasn't working. And I was like, this is a moment where you should be at the front to at least set some tempo because you want the group to keep cooperating.
I think they gambled. I think he tried once.
Yeah.
And then everyone just kept attacking them. And he's like, if me and Jai keep trying to close moves for 30Ks to Marie Blanque, we're fucked. And so I think they gambled. Maybe they didn't have a choice. And they're like, if a counter move goes, we can get AG to Artepool.
Yeah, but there are also moments like there was a split that happened before Wout van Aert attacked.
Yeah, that was
where Bookman was in Group 1 and Hindley was in Group 2, and Hindley closed Group 1 without the help of Bookman because Bookman was staying in Group 1. That made no sense. Bookman should drop back, pace back that group so Hindley doesn't have to do it himself. Now, maybe they just don't trust Bookman on the flat. That's also a possibility.
They wanted to save Bookman to do the lead out or to pace on Marie Blanque, and that's what he's... Bookman is like Koos. Like, there is really... And he's better on the flat than Sepp probably, but there is only so much he can do against a Madawaz, even a Jorgensen or a Haig on the flat. He's a pure climber. So I think...
Isn't he then the wrong rider to be in this breakaway with Hindley?
But also...
You don't have that choice too much, eh?
They... Of course, Jungels for the valley is brilliant, but I think you got to take what you can get. I think...
Agreed.
Anyway, so I do think maybe Jumbo could have... But then... You put Van Baarle on the front, you chew into this gap, you now don't have a satellite rider after Marie Blanque. So I think that's the line they're trying to dance under. Why are UAE still pacing now, Benji, full into the base of Marie Blanque? Is it Hindley?
Of course.
You don't think they're still going for a stage?
No, I think it's full on to try and keep Hindley within reach because we're talking about a gap that is still relatively dangerous for Hindley. Hindley won a Grand Tour. He's not a shit climber. He was a third favorite for us towards this Tour de France, except for Adam Yates. But when it comes to UAE pacing, it started to become more than Langen and Bjerg, though, right? Because we saw Soler moving up on one of those hills before we got to Muddy Blanc to already do some work. We saw quite a bit of other riders doing work, but we didn't have Grosschartner yet working at that point. Maika was still there. Adam Yates was still there. Pogacar was still there. So those are the riders that are still left for Muddy Blanc. But I feel like when they were pulling towards Muddy Blanc, I thought, okay, they've got 4 riders, Grosschartner, Yates, Maika, and so forth. This seems like something they can still control for now. But then you look at the breakaway, and that's where everything started exploding, right? Because Hindley was good, but it was a different team that exploded it.
In the breakaway, Berthet, man, the mountain bike rider. This guy, I think he's still under contract, which is kind of irritating to me. Because this is a perfect until 2025. I think they've extended him already. They gave him a little extension. So this guy is an up-and-coming pure climber that you need to watch out for and really take note down in your little black book. This guy will be winning a big Grand Tour breakaway mountain stage soon. I hope he maybe even does the Vuelta, probably too many race days. Berthet shreds this breakaway.
Yeah.
And these are not bad riders in this breakaway.
Yeah.
Like, he's shredding it. I don't know who he dropped off the wheel, but basically he's taken it from 20 after Frail's been pulling. He drops Van Aert. Oh, sorry, they catch Van Aert, he's gone.
Mate.
Benoit gone.
He was making Buchmann suffer ahead of Hindley.
Yeah, Buchmann lost the wheel.
Yeah, he loses the wheel, and Hindley has to close it towards Gull. And then we see that Buchmann takes a position behind Hindley because he still wants to try and be somewhat meaningful on the climb itself. Ciccone was not in the perfect position there. I think he was on 6th wheel and so forth. Would he be able to follow what happened afterwards? I'm not so sure. But when Berthet is off the front, Gull just absolutely smashes it. And who's still in the wheel? Hindley, and then the gap is solid to the next chaser. It's Ciccone and Buchmann. Those are the next 2. Then we've got Martinez, who... Can we talk about Martinez sprinting for a KOM there for a second?
Oh, yeah. What? So, yeah, this is over the little Cat 3 Col d'Icher, which is the little warm-up before Marie Blanc that breaks up the valley. And it's a Cat 3, as Benji said, 2 points, 1 point for first and second. And Van Aert, Neylands, and Alaphilippe ahead. Frail and AG2R have been riding full as tug buddies, trying to get him to catch Van Aert and Neylands. And he attacks at the top to try and get a KOM point that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Also, where did he come? He came second on the Soudet sprint, or maybe not even second. Like, it seemed, I really don't, I think sometimes if you want to win a stage and you're not, clearly the best, you should really just focus on winning the stage, particularly when your teammate is pulling for you to win the stage. Like, even if there was one KOM point there, like, really?
I agree. I think they should focus on the likes of Soudet and not on the smaller. But this is also a blatant mistake by the Ineos car. That's just bad research. If you have your rider in the breakaway sprinting for 0 points because there are riders up the road, you didn't do your job in researching that specific KOM point. Let's be honest about that.
I mean, I think I don't know what they were doing.
It can't be his own decision to be like, I'm going to sprint for it. The team should have notified him that there's no points left and he shouldn't sprint for it.
Yeah. I don't know. But anyway. Hindley basically now has 230 on Marie Blanc, and now it's like the peloton advantage doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Because you needed to close Hindley down before Marie Blanc.
Yeah. Because
Hindley's going full beans as they get to the steep section over the top of Felix Gall, and he's pacing against Rafael Maika, and the draft is not as much anymore. So UAE can't really close it down. I was waiting, Benji, and maybe this was a tell. I thought UAE, if Poggy felt really good, were going to put Yates on the front like they did the other day on Haïskabel, or like they did on Côte de Piquet. And I thought they were going to, because Maika wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
He was not closing Hindley down.
Yeah.
And I thought and the pull from Yates never came.
Is this a consequence of what happened before in the stage, that they are with so limited riders at this point on Muddy Blanc? Because yes, Adam Yates is there. Yes, Maika is there, but his pull is actually not as what you would expect from a Maika. Then we look at Grosschartner. Yeah, he came from the breakaway to help there a bit, but it wasn't a long pull in the first place. They spent Soler before, they spent Bjerg before, they spent Lengen before, which Lengen isn't going to make the difference here. Bjerg could make the difference on the first 2 grains of this climb, but not on the actual steep section. So I feel like UAE fucked it at the start of the stage by having a breakaway with Hindley in front in the first place.
Yeah, but once it's formed and it has 90 seconds, you're fucked.
What can you do, eh? If it has 40 seconds, you can't close down a 30-second man group. But
like, that's why when in these big valleys, rolling valleys, these big breaks get a gap. It can get out of control and get out of hand quickly. And so the camera changes to Hindley. Hindley's pulling with Gull. He drops Gull. And this is not a surprise. And this is why Benji, maybe we'll talk about it at the end, but I was surprised at the willingness of AG2R and Ineos and maybe Trek to work with the guy who came third on the Queen stage of the Dauphiné, who won the Giro last year. Like,
it depends.
I feel like they could have... Like, did you ever think Martinez was dropping Hindley on Marie Blanque?
I agree with you. I think Ineos, completely right. I think Ajdazer, O'Connor is already in the shadow realm in GC.
And Gol is fucking flying. Who knows what Gol can do? And Ciccone was good in the Dauphiné. So maybe Ineos is the one where it's like, really?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you have been countering? But if you don't make the move with Van Aert, it's too late. I don't know.
Because they're pulling these riders away from their potential GC riders. Yes, when it comes to GC riders, they're not overly impressive except for one man on this climb. We'll get to that in a second. Because action's going on in the peloton.
But that's what I mean. Madouas is not counted in that group. He has a GC rider. Ineos have a GC rider. Trek have a Skelmoser. O'Connor, as you said, O'Connor, it's like, okay, are you really going to make Gol not pull because of O'Connor? But Hindley, he full dropped Gol, right? It wasn't on the descent. He went away with like 2Ks to go. Yeah.
But it's also expected that Hindley can drop Gol on that climb, to be honest.
Badai was 4K, 5Ks, 10% for higher altitude. Hindley is really good at this sort of effort. And he didn't have to do too much in the breakaway. It wasn't like he was... Like, when the group was together, he was never in the win. So he goes, and then the camera cuts back. We haven't seen, and we knew something might have happened. Keldergoat's gone. So something, the pace must have been pretty high. I think Kelderman must have been the man to put on the initial pace.
Or he had a bad day. We don't know.
Not possible. Not accepted. I'm getting back in Luke's good books. He's gone. The group is suddenly 6-7 guys. Yeah. We see Rodriguez. Pidcock is struggling. We see Pogacar's there with Yates. There's no UAE left anymore. Simon Yates is at the back. Who else was there from GC? Gaudu is there looking actually pretty good. And then it's Sepp Kuss just driving it for Vingegaard.
Absolutely driving it. But the first second we saw that, Pidcock was still at the back of the group.
Yeah.
And that was really fucking good, in my opinion. Yes.
He's in good shape.
We're not far into the climb yet. But so many people that you would expect there. Like, I would expect the Landa to still build.
Yeah, Landa was gone.
He was in the shadow realm. I'm pretty sure there was someone else that was also already dropping at that point that we were shocked by. But
Adam Yates was going.
Yeah, Adam Yates was having trouble a bit later. Not necessarily at the Landa point. But Kuss was moving. Kuss was making moves. And it was not an easy pace. It was Kuss with Jonas in the wheel, with Pogacar in that wheel. So it once again confirms that Pogacar is the man for UAE because they put him in the wheel of Jonas. That shows that, but that was pretty obvious already. Adam Yates in the wheel of Pogacar. Then we've got other riders, and Kuss just keeps on going. And Kuss keeping up going thins out this group one by one, and it ends up with a group of, I think it was 4 riders, because Adam Yates, like you said, got in trouble at roughly this point in the race. And who was left? The guys we said. With Carlos Rodriguez, I was shocked that he was there, man. I'm so hyped about it.
I am. It's an incredible performance, but when you saw him in the earlier stages, I've never seen him look so skinny. Yep. He looked crazy skinny. Now, maybe it's because he's not in the Spanish champs jersey anymore, and the white jersey's not as flattering, but his arms looked scary skinny. And so, yeah, he was doing really, really well, Carlos Rodriguez. Rodriguez's result here, he deserved better than a top 10. Coming 10th. Rodriguez was actually stronger than that, so I'll be interested to see how he goes later on. Kuss ramps up the pace. We get to, but we're like, where is Van Aert? Where is Benoit? We're seeing the time gaps start with Kuss pacing. The time gap to Hindley melts to 2 minutes now. It goes below 2 minutes, 150, 140. And then we're like, well, Van Aert's not making it over the top. So he's waiting somewhere to do a death pull. And Benoit probably also not making it over the top. He was trying to, because the plateau is really important to have a satellite rider. And we see Van Aert do his pull. we were chopping and changing between Hindley and that, and I can't remember. Had Van Aert finished and then Koos went again, Benji?
Yeah, Koos went again, and then it took still another at least half a kilometer before we saw a move next to that, because when Koos had his spool done, we all know what's going to happen here. Jonas Vingegaard attacks past a car that was standing still on the road towards Benoit that was not ready to do anything at that point. Benoit was done for. And what do we see from Pogacar? Absolutely nothing when it comes to the reaction. I don't even think he tried to react to Jonas' attack, because he probably realized, okay, I can't follow this man. I'm at my limit here. I'm at my threshold. This was where I need to ride tempo, or I will lose 17 minutes today. And that's what he does. He rides tempo, and we see the gap from Jonas to Pogacar expand quite a bit very quickly. And did it remain the same for a bit before it expanded?
I feel like Poggy did try to hold Vingegaard's pace initially. I think he wasn't out of the saddle, but for sure he lifted his watts.
Yeah.
And there's been at no point ever has Vingegaard got an initial gap on Pogacar, and Pogacar's closed it on the climb.
Yeah.
Von 2, he closed it on the descent.
Yeah.
But once the gap is there, now we're talking, okay, what will the gap be? Because
correct,
10 seconds isn't enough. 10 seconds with that plateau, if Vingegaard's isolated and Pogacar gets some allies, you can close that, no problem. So it's not a guarantee at that point, as you say, if Pogacar's riding conservatively and Vingegaard has to slow down after his attack, but Vingegaard has a few things in his favor. He goes past Benoit, gives him a thumbs up and says, yeah, good luck, buddy, but Vingegaard has a few things in his favor, sort of, initially. The breakaway has been dropped by Hindley and they're ahead, and they will make it over the top of the climb.
Yeah.
And so could he get a couple of pulls from people? Ciccone and Goal, who they catch up to? Maybe. Koos comes back to Pogacar. That was the tell to me that he did actually slow down a little bit, because Koos has done a death lead-out pull. Pogacar's responded, and then Koos has come back to him. That means to me Pogacar slowed down a bit. And so the second heli shot we see, the gap is really big.
And it's very difficult for us to know the exact gap, because the time gaps were Italian time gaps. Like, there were time gaps that went up and down depending on where the motorbike was on the road. And we didn't know how far the gap was between Vingegaard and Pogacar until we reached the top of the climb. So the situation at the top is simple. Hindley is ahead. Then we've got roughly a minute 10, roughly like that, a bit less than a minute 10 towards Jonas Vingegaard, who is trying to catch up with Ciccone and Goal and will do that just after the top. And then there is a gap of 37 seconds from Jonas Vingegaard to Tadej Pogacar. 37 seconds for Pogacar to lose on the Col du Marie Blanque. For me, that's extremely worrying for the rest of the Tour de France, because this is a climb that, on paper, if Pogacar is at his peak, he can compete with Vingegaard with.
No. Poggy went 50 seconds quicker than he did in 2020 on the climb.
Yeah, but these are the climbs where he needs to do it, because on the longer climbs, the gap is going to be bigger.
Exactly. I agree with your overall point. I agree. If he is to win the Tour, and you get dropped on this, now you have big problems, because Puy de Dôme is harder, longer, and finishes at the top. Yeah. So to your point, I agree, 100% agree with your point that it's not a good sign for Pogacar. But yeah, it was for people wanting to know, how does this compare? Pogacar's level. I think that narrative will start now, that Pogacar's only got dropped because he had a wrist injury, which, listen, he may not be in the best shape possible. I've been saying that for a while, that, I think it must have had an effect, but the reality is Jonas went 80 seconds quicker on this climb than they did in 2020, where they had, I think, a tailwind, and where they went full beans. Jumbo drove the base on the shallow section. So it wasn't a slow time. And Poggy's gone 45 seconds quicker than that. So I think the reality is this climb shows that Vingegaard's just better than him on the climbs.
We knew that on longer climbs he was better, but now it's also
no
clear that at the
proof on
moment
this.
he's better on versatile terrain as well, which that's a terrain where Pogacar had to strike to be able to do something. Yeah. And from this point onwards, the gap keeps increasing between Jonas and Pogacar, because at first I thought this is going to stay relatively equal, because now they're going up on top and then in the descent and so forth, but Vingegaard reaches Ciccone and so forth. Ciccone not riding at all. The gap starting to become under a minute. I was kind of surprised that Ciccone was not riding at all, even though Skjelmose is behind, even though Hindley is ahead. I see no point in Ciccone not riding there? Because you might as well try to still win the stage.
Why chase Hindley? Why chase Hindley on your own? And then when someone helps you chase Hindley, stop chasing Hindley.
Yeah.
In the last 2Ks, don't pull. If Hindley's already gone. But yeah, I thought I also think Benji, he couldn't. Vingegaard was pulling like a truck. We saw when Ciccone in goal, when they caught him, they tried to get back in the pace line. And I think Ciccone did try to give him a pull, and then he shook his head like, fuck, man, I can't pull. I can't pull as quick as this. You're pulling like a truck. So, and that's the situation. Hindley goes clear. Brilliant performance. We should talk about him first, I think. Hindley, masterclass from Bora, dropped everybody and played them before Marie Blanque, and then was too classy on Marie Blanque. His descending was also the best in the breakaway this whole stage. And also, it's not easy on that 8K false flat uphill drag to just hold a gap. And he actually was holding that gap stable to Vingegaard in the last 3 kilometers. He wins the stage. His first Tour de France win. Bora will be very happy to get on the board, and also takes the yellow jersey and with a big gap over a lot of other GC contenders. So this is the dream scenario for Bora today.
I don't think it's a coincidence that the moment we had the Torino coup in the Giro 2022?
Last year,
Yeah, 2022. That's the right year. The coup where they had riders in the breakaways, Vihov and Silflov, then they attacked on a hill somewhere in the middle of the stage and got something out of there for Hindley as well. That was one stage. And then today, once again, a coup from start to finish. Gasparotto's in the car. I feel like there's coincidence there. As in, there's no coincidence there. As in, I feel Gasparotto is actively working on making Takis at Bora better.
And you need some cojones.
Yeah.
Because, there's a risk that Hindley gets caught before Marie Blanque. He's been doing a lot of work all day, and he gets dropped by the other GC contenders. I don't think it's that likely, but, there's risks to what Hindley did too. And they get rewarded because if you stay in the GC group, you don't win the stage. You have no chance to win the stage, and you actually take more time this way. So really a masterclass from Bora, and Hindley's in top shape, winning the stage. Gold, Ciccone and Bookman obviously sit on Vingegaard in the last 2 kilometers. He extends the gap actually on the flat section to Pogačar, and this is what's important. We were discussing this on the watch along, Benji.
Yep.
Fresh, both on a road bike, on a false flat section, Pogačar has an advantage on Vingegaard because he's heavier and he does more absolute watts. But when you've just been dropped and when you're cooked and the other guy's feeling it, you will lose more time. And we saw in Basque Country that Vingegaard's not, he's not a coos. Like, he goes quick too on these sections. So Vingegaard extends the gap. That group, Ciccone Gold take the bonus second and third for the stage. Bookman fourth. Vingegaard, actually, they put him on 2 seconds. There's a gap of over a second from Bookman to Vingegaard. He finishes on 34 seconds to Hindley, 1 minute and 4 seconds ahead of a GC group behind of Schelmoser, Martinez, Pogačar, Godu, Rodriguez, Haig, Kuss, Simon Yates, Madouas, Adam Yates. I thought Adam Yates should have pulled in the group earlier to get back to Pogačar. It might have made 1 second difference.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of people in that group should have paced more than they did.
Madouas should have waited for Godu at the top.
Yeah, exactly. He waited way too late. Simon Yates should have been pacing. Well, when it comes to other riders in the group, I don't remember who was in there, by the way. Schelmoser caught up. He should be pacing. He was pacing. He was a really active rider there. His descending is actually outrageous. Like,
Schelmoser is mad, yeah.
He's a fucking good descender. That is insane. Like, this guy's ascending the way they did at Tour de Suisse, this time again, because he was dropped by those guys on top, got back to the group. That is massive. But would you say that with Adam Yates at this point being in that group with Pogačar, you see that Adam Yates is pacing Pogačar to the line in the last kilometer, for example, but does this change UAE's view on the race towards, we're now trying to secure position second and third in this Tour de France after seeing this? Or do you think they'll still try to hammer the entire Tour de France to get Pogačar on top?
That's a really interesting question because, let's be honest, UAE got humbled today.
Yeah.
UAE have been, they had a good start to the Tour de France. They won the opening stage with Adam Yates going into yellow. Couldn't have been a better start. And, everything going well. And then they took it upon themselves to make the race today and didn't really look to Jumbo to control. And they were going to go for this stage to win with Pogačar, and Vingegaard has just ruined Pogačar. And so, people did laugh at when I said Adam Yates. I said that mainly because I didn't believe in a 1v1 battle without them crashing that Pogačar could win this tour.
Yeah.
And so they needed to do something else. And Adam
I
Yates,
didn't believe in the other thing.
but Adam Yates, frankly, isn't at the level either because he got dropped by Koos pacing, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, and what Adam Yates is going to get in the break today, and Jumbo are going to let that happen and play out. Like, so, you know, would it have made a difference? No. But that was why I was sort of on that train of thought. And you're right. What do they do now? Because you can't chase for the stage on Puy de Dome.
Did we go through the GC already?
We haven't.
I'll do that. Chai Hindley, first, yellow jersey now because of the actions of today. 47 seconds on Jonas Vingegaard. We've got a minute 03 on Ciccone. That's an interesting one because now Skelmos and Ciccone are both in the top 10 for Trek. Curious if they will still play Ciccone breakaway or will they actually go for GC as well, top 10. I'm not 100% convinced after today when it comes to Ciccone GC, but Buchmann in fourth also moved forward. Terrifying, but a minute 11 behind. I feel like he didn't get the opportunity to work for Hindley and prove that he's that teammate either today. He was there to do it, but other teams did it for him all the time.
I think Buchmann did a good job today.
Yeah.
I think if he's not there, a proper rouleur split goes at some point and Hindley's gone.
He was clearly there to help out Hindley in the first place. So that's a very solid thing. So he deserves that credit. Adam Yates in fifth on 134. Pogacar in sixth on 140. So 6-second difference between the two teammates. Skelmose and Simon Yates are behind it. Simon Yates on the same time as Tadej Pogacar on 7th. Skelmose on 156 on 8th. Carlos Rodriguez on 9th, same time. And then we've got Gaudu as well on same time, 156 on 10th.
But you see what I mean for Carlos? Like if this finished at the top, he's 5th on 130 or something.
About Carlos, he crashed next to his team bus after the race. Doesn't look too injured, but he was knocked off his bike by, I think, a spectator or something.
That's so shit.
Let's hope it has no influence because that's just fucking stupid. That's annoying. And
he's crashed so much this year.
Yeah. But hopefully that means nothing for the coming stages. Riders like Woods on 11th and so forth, those are riders that I expect to fall even more once the stages become harder, even though
we haven't had
it was pretty okay today.
I mean, Souday's over a 30-minute climb, but we haven't really had... this wasn't even a long climb, and already this huge GC gap. So Jumbo-Visma, Benji, you know, in hindsight, you could say Jumbo-Visma should have never tried to get in the breakaway.
Yeah.
And they should have paced full gas and made a manageable break with Van Aert and Benoit and launched Vingegaard and Marie Blanque to win the stage, and now they wouldn't have to deal with Hindley being ahead.
On the opposite effect, you can also say that them not pacing in the peloton and being ahead made the breakaway a bit more harder to catch, and therefore UE spent more riders before they got to Marie Blanque in the first place. That's also a possibility, but regardless of that, Pogacar would have dropped the way he dropped. Maybe not the same time, but he would have dropped regardless.
Yeah. I don't know. That's sort of, you know, that's only if you really, really think Jonas will drop Pogacar. And even if you do, I think you want to have satellite riders.
Yep.
Okay, I did think Jonas could drop Pogacar today. I did not expect the gap to be so big.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, 10 seconds, but what's 10 seconds going to get you?
It's a fucking minute, mate.
Yeah, I know, but I thought if it's 10 seconds and Vingegaard doesn't have a satellite rider, then it could just be close. And so really that was why the satellite riders I thought were important in the breakaway ahead and making UAE make the race. So, you know, at least, it's nearly a minute. So over a minute from Vingegaard to Pogacar. So what do you think? I think now the next step for Vingegaard is Hindley. I think you have to take time on someone that's ahead of you. That's just rule number 1 of GC. You have to respect him. You have to respect his quality. And so I think now you have to treat Hindley very, very seriously. You can't just be like, we'll take it back. You cannot have that attitude.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure tomorrow is the moment to do that either. I also think that they should still keep an eye on Pogacar as well.
Of course, You must also defend against Pogacar.
Because Pogacar is still one of the competitors for this Tour de France, regardless of him being a minute behind now, just under a minute behind now. So Hindley's the next step for Vingegaard while keeping track of Pogacar along the way and maybe some other dangerous riders behind, but those are the two main focuses right now. But will they be doing that on tomorrow's stage yet? I'm not sure that's the ideal scenario because I'll let you talk through the parcours first.
From Tarbes to Cauterets-Cambasque. Now, Vuelta stage finished here, even though it's in France, and the Vuelta actually returns to France this year. So Rasmussen, Zula, and Indurain, and maybe Rees did some big numbies here. And I don't know if that was in the Tour, but Rasmussen, I think, in the Vuelta finished on Cauterets. So I think this is a harder stage than people think.
I can't believe that when it comes to this stage, you're focusing on Cauterets. Tourmalet is my history when it comes to cycling.
I don't know what's ever happened on
2010
Tourmalet.
Contador versus Schleck on the Tourmalet was amazing.
Maybe we do need maybe for this tour we do need that SRAM drop chain for Jonas. It'd probably just make him angry. And just like,
Netflix would be happy.
Yeah, Netflix will be. Yeah, Netflix I think will be pretty happy with how this week's gone so far. But yeah, the first 56 kilometers are largely flat. There is a category 3 climb, 5.7 k's, 4.7%. In the middle of that starts with about 25 k's to go. I think the break will probably form there. Now the problem for that is that's only about 25 k's before the Col d'Aspin starts, which is 12 k's, 6.6%. Then not that steep a descent. And then they start the Tourmalet, as Benji said, 17 k's, 7.4%. It's the Souvenir Jacques Godet, 5k euro to the first person over the top, 21,000 meters, which is quite high for this tour.
Yeah.
Then a descent to the base of Col, which is a stepped climb. It's actually a fake news climb a little bit because it's 16 k's, 5%. The first 3 k's of 5% or so, then there's this 8% K, and then it falls flat uphill, and then there's 4%, and then there's a 3k 10% section through the hairpins nearer to the finish before another 5% for a couple of k's to the finish. So listen, this is not the Col de Grenelle stage. The Tourmalet is not as hard as this is not as hard as the Telegraph Galibier combo.
Mm-hmm.
That's harder and higher. The descent and the time from the top of Tourmalet to the start of Col is quicker than the top of Galibier to the start of Grenelle, but this climb is in no way comparable to Grenelle, this finish. And so that's the problem for this stage.
I think so as well. And also, I recall hearing that there's headwind from the top of Tourmalet towards Col as well. I don't know how heavy that's going to be and so forth, but if that's the case, then that has an influence. And when it comes to the stage, I said it from the start when I saw it, this is breakaway. But after that, I'm also feeling like if you're Jumbo and you're seeing Pogacar's weakness, you want to use week 1. So at least Puy de Dôme, they need to use full big time to try and gain even more time on Pogacar. And if there's any stages like that anymore, then they need to do that. But if this is the one, I don't necessarily think this might be the one to absolutely explode it, even though I'd love it as a viewer. I'd love for someone to explode Tourmalet to try and get something like that out of it. The difference is, though, that Yoi's not the one that needs to control the brake now. Jumbo's needs to control the brake.
And Bora do. They will take it upon. You think Bora will let Pogacar and UAE start?
Well, they will both have to control the brake.
I know, but Jumbo will get out. First of all, Jai Hindley podiuming this tour is now more likely than not.
Can he even get second?
Exactly. He's in yellow. They have a good as fuck team with Jungels, Buchmann, Conrad. Their team is very good. I think Bora will also be like, we're not going to allow situations to happen that we don't want. So
when it comes to their team, we have focused mainly on UAE and Jumbo, but let's go through this team for a second. Obviously, Hindley and Buchmann and Conrad, we've seen them today. Jungels is in there, fucking strong rider.
Yeah.
Meus, Pollitt, Van Poppel. Pollitt is good for breakaway formation phase.
Yes.
Van Poppel and Meus, they've got flat skill.
They can also help in break formation tomorrow.
I agree. Marco Haller can work with that as well.
Sure.
So they've got a team to also help with the breakaway formation phase, and they might switch a bit in that sense. But I will re-say again what I said during the podcast, and I'm not sure you 100% agree with it, but I still believe that UAE's fuck up next to the fact that Pogacar wasn't good enough was also to let that breakaway go. Because you're saying, if the break has that many seconds, yes, but a 36-man breakaway, Jumbo-Visma wouldn't have let a 36-man breakaway with Hindley go away at any point during the Tour last year, for example.
Oh, yeah, so what you're saying is, if you want to win the stage with Pogacar and take the bonies, you make sure a group of 5 guys you can control easily goes.
Or even if it's a breakaway, that wins the stage. If it doesn't have Hindley, that's a big win.
I am convinced they still wanted the bonies.
If that's the case, sure. But even regardless of that, if you want to give the yellow jersey away, which I think would have been a good strategy as well today, but not to Hindley, then that's the case. So I still believe they fucked up there. We've said it for, was it 2 years or a year that we've been talking about their breakaway formation phase being an issue for UAE. And it shows up once again today that this is a major issue now. It doesn't matter in the end.
But back to tomorrow. We were talking about tomorrow's stage.
It doesn't matter because Pogacar was worse than Vingegaard anyway.
Yeah, but I think the stage being overall more difficult is always going to make the gaps bigger.
Yeah.
Not that it was like the most brutal stage ever for the GC guys in the wheels either. But tomorrow, you know, as we said, the finishing climb isn't so hard. Benji said headwind from Tourmalet to the base of Cauterets.
Benji thinks headwind.
Yeah, Benji, weatherman Benji's
God.
guaranteed headwind. So there'll be a 70 kph tailwind.
Actually, like, it's going to have thunder, lightning, major hail.
I hope not.
Okay.
Like in Andorra. I mean, if it's anything, it's not far from here. It's like only 3 hours away. Anyway, but more inland. I actually don't know what's going to happen tomorrow because...
Break wins.
Yeah, but it's such a short stage, 145 Ks. And if the break only forms on that first Cat 3, and then another team is starting to pull. And
Will teams be tired from today?
No.
No?
No. Those guys in the breakaway doing a lot of work. The guys in the break will be tired, like a Haig, like a Jorgensen, maybe, like a Martinez, like a Freyler. But Jumbo, why would most of Jumbo's team, like Van Baal or Van Hooijdonk, be that tired?
Exactly. Keldergoat. He barely pulled.
Keldergoat split the grip. I will not hear that. I think... But then can you drop... If you're Jumbo, can you drop Hindley on the Tourmalet? And if Vingegaard drops him on the Tourmalet, then you got a long way to the finish. If Vingegaard drops Hindley, Benji, does Hindley pull full gas with Godou in his wheel, with Rodriguez in his wheel, with Schelmers or Pogacar in his wheel? Or does he already start thinking second? He's in the yellow. I think he pulls, and I think Poggi pulls with him.
Fuck it. I'll change my expectations for tomorrow completely. I think if I'm Jumbo, I do everything in my power to explode Tourmalet. I try and get an early guy in the breakaway, whether it's Wout van Aert, whether it's Benoit. Laporte maybe is not good enough for this. I will think so.
Laporte, though, remember, he was the guy over the top of Telegraph.
But Telegraph is not Aspan plus Tourmalet, because you need someone behind Tourmalet. You don't need someone on Aspan.
No, but I don't know how you get a guy over the top.
Because
it's going to be impossible. I don't think to get a guy over the top is going to be extremely... The break will have to go in the first 10 Ks to get a guy over the top.
I agree.
Because you're not going to drop Hindley and Pogacar or anyone, because if the break's only 2 minutes ahead, we better do the Tourmalet slow. Well, then you're not going to drop anybody.
But if you then explode on the Tourmalet yourself as Jumbo, then you've got 50 kilometers to the finish line from the top of Tourmalet. It also won't be easy, but it's also not impossible.
Cauterets will be hard. That is a hard climb.
Depends on what happens behind.
16 Ks with undulating uphill.
Is there no way anyone gets ahead that makes it over the Tourmalet?
I think it's possible, but it would have to be like Kelderman or someone. Like Van Aert's climbing, frankly, to me, is not looking as good as last year. So
if we compare today's breakaway formation to this breakaway formation, if it's like today, then the breakaway might not be formed by Aspan, but then again, you've got Caverne-les-Bains, which I feel like that might be the moment where the break forms, or just after that climb. And then you've still got, if they can close it down within the next 30 kilometers, the gap can be 3 minutes, 4 minutes before Col d'Aspin.
You never make it. You're like 3 minutes before Aspan, because then everyone will pace full. Do you think UAE will try strike back tomorrow?
Yeah, but what you're saying is 3-4 minutes on before Aspan. Let's say you've got that. Sure. In the peloton, what will they do then? Because let's say
they will do Aspan at the same speed as the breakaway, because it will be a rouleur pacing like a Van Baal or a Soler or something.
So 3-4 minutes, Aspan at the same tempo as the breakaway.
And then you lose time on the descent.
4 minutes and a half before we start Tourmalet. You'd need to actually have action. The
break guide have to be pretty good, man.
Yes, but
it's a 50-minute climb. I agree with you. It's possible. But it would have to, a lot of things would have to work out. The break guy has to be really good.
Ciccone wins.
You're like, he's too close on GC. He's not allowed to break.
You're right. Fuck.
But he was close on GC. But he was on 43 seconds today, and he was allowed to break.
But that's different because UAE was controlling the breakaway.
Yeah, but will Jumbo care if Giulio Ciccone goes in the breakaway?
Hindley will.
Actually, maybe they do. Yeah. Let's not do Hindley again.
Who's the kind of rider? Because Bernal's on 4 minutes. That would be fucking great if Bernal goes in the breakaway. But I don't see him as the kind of rider to pull it off. Bilbao was on 3 minutes 30.
I think someone like Haig's level will win from the break.
Martinez 16 minutes.
Yeah, Martinez is a good one. Did he lose a lot of time? Okay, I'm going with
Oh, he
Martin.
moved up in GC.
Actually,
16 minutes.
I think the GC group wins. And I think it's I think probably Vingegaard wins because he outsprints people. Like
Yep.
not Poggy, but I think Poggy will struggle
Yep.
again. So I'm going with Vingegaard to win.
I find it the most likely scenario, but I want the breakaway to win.
Yep.
So I'm going to say
Juanpe.
not Juanpe, get out of here. When it comes to Pidcock, is an interesting one because he's on 12th in GC, if I recall correctly, or something.
He's
but
too
he's too close. But again, well, at 2 minutes 30,
is he on 2:30?
Pidcock goes in the break and wins the stage.
His shape is really good.
But Ineos doesn't do that shit.
No, he will.
Ineos will put Martinez in the break and not Pidcock.
Oh, Bernal. Ineos will try be in the break. It might be someone like Pidcock. Madouas is also a nice rider for this sort of finish, given the undulations. Felix Gall will try again.
It's Bilbao or Pidcock.
If the break wins, I go with Felix Gall. I think he can't feel the chain right now. And so, yeah, I go with Gall. The problem for Gall is that he can't go solo on Tourmalet because he can't descend. So that's the problem for him. Alrighty. Let us know your questions down below. Do we have anything else? I mean, is the Tour de France over? Not yet, but if this is happening on this stage, it doesn't bode well for the later stages. But I also think let's not just assume that Jai Hindley
is weak.
Is going to, ship, is Juanpe in the Giro. Sorry, I keep bashing Juanpe. I don't mean to, but, he
was a hero to us.
Yeah, when El Patron led the Giro or Odd Christian Eiking led the Vuelta, this is not that caliber of rider. No. This is a serious guy. Let's not just... And Broe are going to fight tooth and nail to keep that GC position. So you could have the situation where Bookman is pulling very hard with Pogačar and Hindley to chase the solo SKP ahead. So...
To finalize this podcast, we've had a major shift in how the Tour de France looks right now. What is your podium at the end of this Tour de France based on today's stage?
Vingegaard, Hindley, Pog. Pog was still better than everybody else. But for Pog to beat Hindley to come second, he almost needs to forget about Jonas now. And I don't think he's going to be ready to do that.
If we take a look at time trial skills, for example, 13th in the time trial of Dauphiné, he's gotten better Hindley.
Yeah, he's not a scrub in the TT.
But I think Pogačar gets second because of the time trial.
Yeah, but Pogačar could flick himself in other stages.
Obviously, he could go all out in one stage. He could do what I proposed on the preview, be behind by stage 20, do a 90-kilometer solo, because that's my scenario. It's still in the cards.
This is why I didn't pick him for the podium. I thought he would struggle early on or on the longer climbs. I don't think he's going to accept, okay, I'll ride to maximize to come second, and he'll get played by guys who are on a good level, like Jai Hindley or someone like that. Adam Yates, that pick, though, that one's not looking so crash hot for me. It's a long... Oh, to be honest, Adam Yates is still in provisional third because Ciccone and Bookman might drop before. So Adam Yates is looking all right.
Nah, it's not looking all right.
It's not looking good. Not looking good, bruv. All right, this has been a long podcast. Obviously an outstanding stage. We won't have a watch along tomorrow because it's just a little bit too tiring, but we will be back for Puy de Dôme on the weekend, stage 9. So really hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for all your support. And we'll be back with another brutal mountain stage tomorrow. Until then, ciao.